Hi, my name is Amy. Thank you very much for watching, and let's make some bad financial decisions together. This is for entertainment purposes only, so if you're entertained, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. I was scrolling on YouTube today, and Darth Dividend asked if I could create my own YieldMax ETF, how would you do it? And I didn't realize when I took the screenshot that that was the comment, but that's kind of hilarious. But like I think this question is asking what kind of a fund would I be looking at for from YieldMax? What would get me excited for YieldMax? And as someone that's been covering this, you know, for the last however many months, I think for me, my appetite for single stock ETFs has dwindled. And so I think that YieldMax should work more with indexes and creating their own indexes, which I thought made more sense when I thought that the expense ratio was lower because they're just following an index instead of actively managing it. So if they could figure out how to do, like, my initial idea when I saw this would be the ticker would be called half. And they would just take half from each group, like the ones that show the most momentum, the top half from each of the groups, have it be a weekly pair, and you would only do it on those half, the half that are doing good. And that would exclude the ones that are doing bad. If we aren't actually using the single stock ETFs that actually exist with YieldMax to like Frankenstein something together, I think having a strategy that's core, either UPRO or TQQQ, and then having like maybe half of it be momentum type stocks, and then the half of that would be half of it in synthetics and half of it you own the underlying. And even with the owning the underlying, you could do half of the real stuff is in a dividend wheel. And so diversity through things that aren't like totally off the wall and memes, like UPRO and TQQQ generally, I know it seems a bit weird to say at the beginning of a bear market, but like they go up and to the right if you zoom out long enough. So I do think that I still want a high yield from YieldMax. I just think that a lot of retail investors, they just disagree with Jay what is the maximum yield that YieldMax should be trying to get. So like if they did a UPRO or a TQQQ, they could also do half the IV, and we would still get, not targeting a 50%, but if you just do half of the implied volatility, then every time the market sneezes, we don't have to pay a bunch of money to the clearinghouse. So I understand that doing cover calls can be expensive, and that's why we pay Curve and Roundhill and YieldMax to manage the stuff for us. But at the same time, like when the market, we just want things that when the market is going good, it goes up with the market. And a lot of people would prefer if there were downside mitigation things like SVOL does. So overall, I wish that YieldMax would figure out how to index what they have set rules so it's not so actively managed. Like they just pull from the single stock ETFs that they do have, and they offer cheaper things like with 5e. And otherwise, I'm just of the opinion that they need to invest or focus the majority of what they do on companies that have good fundamentals, even if they're not the ones that have the most momentum, and these are momentum play stocks. Like, you can have an ETF that just has a very small portion of it to be like basically memes, but options are expensive when you don't use good companies and it goes against the side that you're betting on. So hopefully that answered Darth Dividend. I was very excited to answer this. And what would your ideas be for YieldMax? And were you surprised that I wasn't just like, well, first you get some MSTU, and then MSTR, and then STRK, and you just make it so you have a very well-rounded strategy, and just make it into your silos. Like, I wouldn't mind, like, I am of the opinion that the ETF that you do go in, you should know the reason why you're in it. And if you want multiple things to happen in your portfolio, you should probably own multiple ETFs. Like, don't get an ETF that's trying to do every little thing for you, because then it fails at basically everything instead of just being really good for the one reason you invested in it in the first place. So, that's my opinion of YieldMax. I was a fan of Ulti for the longest time. Reason for that is it was an interesting premise of just like, give the fund managers money. The fund managers are professionals. They've been doing it for 20 plus years. They should know how to trade options, and they have every single tool available. So why not give it to someone with that vast amount of experience and just let them make money? But it turns out that we're just fueling someone else's gambling addiction, at least allegedly, and that's just what it feels like. But I like things like LFGY and GPTY and SDTY, all of these new weekly pairs that are either based off of broad market indexes, or they actually define the type of companies that they're forced to buy into. And I do like FEET and I do like 5e because they pick the top 5 with the most momentum, even though it is a past-looking indicator. So we might miss some of these surprising out of nowhere, like all of a sudden Pi is getting 100% and for like one time, and then it might get added back into FEET, and then all of a sudden it's back to its 30% yield until the next time we reconstitute it. So but I do think that having an index or a fund of funds that has more exclusion criteria, and that maybe they choose strike prices that are more out of the money so that there's more chance of price appreciation, might be appreciated by the retail investors that buy their stuff. So anyways, what do you think? And if you can find Darth Dividend's comment, please also comment on his stuff, because it was an interesting question, and I appreciate it. And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.